For anybody who didn't come to the first meeting, we'll start this one off with the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to remind everybody to silence all cell phones and other devices. Also, I'd like to let audience members may be able to video, audio recorded by third parties during this public meeting. Sunoco Logistics Mariner 2 update, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. I'm David Broman. I'm with the firm I. Schwartz, and I am special counsel to West Goshen Township in regard to all matters related to Sunoco and specifically a piece of litigation, pending at the Public Utilities Commission. So I've been providing monthly reports for the public's benefit and obviously for the commissioners. So there hasn't been much activity since I last reported here in September. The PUC proceeding to enforce the settlement agreement that we entered into with Sunoco continues. The stay called interim emergency relief that was issued by Administrative Law Judge Elizabeth Barnes on July 24 remains in place. That will be reviewed eventually by the complete Public Utility Commission, but they did not review it at their meetings either on September 26th or October 5. And the next meeting of the commission in which it would possibly be considered would be October 26th. So the agenda is published 24 hours in advance. There's really no public comment, but I think members of the public expressed an interest to attend, and I certainly would encourage that.
So David, how do you communicate? Sorry.
How do you communicate? Like, do you find out on 25th what the agenda is and then notify Mr. Lalonde and he can put something on the website?
Exactly.
Okay.
For the meeting on the 5th, it wasn't posted, and I was checking, I started checking at 7 a.m. that morning. It was posted at 3 p.m. that day. There is no advance notice, and as soon as I found out, I emailed Lily Middlebrooks and posted it to the website, and I notified the board that it was not on the agenda. I'll do the same thing on the 26th as well.
We'll be calling as well, probably 7 days out, because the agenda starts to get put together and staff knows what's going to go on the agenda, and we were able to get some information out of them last time, so hopefully we will.
Yeah.
So that's the pendency of the injunction, if you will, or the stay. But while that's there, we're also going through discovery for the case in chief, and that's been pretty hot and heavy, if you will, with motions for protective orders being filed by Sunoco, blank Rome, so that their documents are kept confidential and certain information is not even discoverable at all, they maintain. And then also motions to compel, so claiming our answers weren't complete enough, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's the normal discovery. Depositions probably will start in earnest, and first week in November probably conclude by holiday time, meaning January 1st. The case also has a complete schedule, so just to let you know what's coming up. Our direct testimony, which is written, is due February 1st. Theirs is due March 1st. Hearings will be on April 25 and on April 26 in Harrisburg. And of course, those are open to the public. Briefs are due May and June, so I just tell you that because I expect an opinion probably on the merits sometime in the June, July, August, probably July, August timeframe of 2018.
Yeah. David, send me an email with those dates so I can post them, so we can get a timeline.
Absolutely.
On the township website.
Absolutely. So in addition to that, the board has asked me to follow some of the other cases, and we've been assisting each other, if you will, behind the scenes. There's a case that, there are two cases actually, that come out of Delaware County Court of Common Pleas and Chester County Court of Common Pleas that were basically ruled the courts can't consider whether whether they can look at local zoning. It's an attempt to enforce local zoning. It has other issues as well. But in any event, that is scheduled for oral argument in Philadelphia on October 18 before the full Commonwealth Court. It'll be an interesting oral argument. We'll be represented, and I would encourage any member of the public that's interested in what's going on, specifically the issue of zoning and whether or not they're a public utility, to attend. And that too, I think, is on the website.
Yeah, I've already posted that.
And then the day after Judge Barnes ruled, of course, DEP came out with its order suspending operations of directional drilling in up to about 60 or so sites throughout the Commonwealth where directional drilling was going on. That case, as you know, was partially settled with a procedure or a protocol, if you will, for them to get back to work of resubmitting additional information, public comment, DEP action. Of the approximate 50 in which resubmissions are due, 7 have been submitted, none have been approved, 5 have been commented on by DEP, and 2 of which are still out for public comment. So that process is moving very slowly. I understand there was a recent incident in East Goshen. I do not have much information on that other than they had 3 frac outs in East Goshen over the weekend and as recently as this morning. And I'm sure DEP will be out there inspecting and hopefully shutting the site down, which has been requested. And then finally, that EHB case is kind of chugging along itself on the merits, and discovery ends there in October. Dispositive motions in November. I expect that case to be concluded by January 31. So that too is a very interesting case and has the potential to overturn all the permits the DEP issued. So that one too is one to watch. I don't think the actual hearing days have been scheduled, but I can give you the dates up to the hearing, and I'll find, when the hearing dates are scheduled, I'll let you know. That has been pretty well attended by members of the public.
David, do the events that have been happening with these inadvertent returns and some of the other things that's never been shut down, does that make that case any easier for the plaintiffs?
I think that all of that information is very, very helpful to that, to that case. They're in the middle of discovery. They're taking a lot of good depositions. They're getting a lot of good information. I think it's a very interesting case, and I think they have a pretty strong potential of winning. So that concludes my report. If anyone has any questions?
Any questions from the audience? Okay. Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Reports for the month of September 2017. Please report, Chief Goshen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the month of September, the West Goshen Police Department responded to 2,039 calls for service. We responded to 60 alarms. We investigated 22 reportable motor vehicle accidents, and we logged 19,753 miles on our patrol vehicles. Amongst other locations, selective enforcement was active on Chrislina Lane, Falcon Lane, Sylvan Road, North New Street, Spruce Avenue, Green Hill Road, Montgomery Avenue, Airport Road, and Ellis Lane. And our career development program continues. Rather than list the officers, I will just tell you the type of training that they attended. Obviously, our emergency response team had their monthly training, as did our honor guard. Members of the SWAT team attended a tactical operations course that lasted 3 days. Our dispatcher attended incident commands training. Our juvenile officers attended sexting webinar. Some of our officers, second in commands, had attended high-impact supervision put on by Penn State University. Our emergency vehicle operation certification course is continuing. We had 8 officers trained through that. Myself and several officers attended crisis intervention training. We're putting together a response team for the county to address people with mental illness. Detective Maurer attended lethality assessment program roundtable, which has to do with domestic violence. Our officers continue with their firearms training, and Officer Cotter attended negotiation training
relative to the ERTT. Officer Edwards attended Top Gun, which is a week-long program put on by the Attorney General's office. And Sergeant Greiser and Officer Grandizio attended Prevention of Terrorist Acts, and 2 officers attended a law enforcement seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Andrea?
Thank you. For the month of September, there were a total of 29 inspections. 5 commercial use and occupancy, 4 fire blocking, 10 sprinkler, 4 framing, 1 fire alarm, 2 fire extinguisher placements, and 3 residential finals. There were 4 fire calls, 2 automatic fire alarms, and 2 odor investigations. And I attended 8 meetings. The Westchester Fire Department had 13 calls for the month. Good Fellowship Ambulance had 102 calls for the month. And Goshen Fire Company had 10 calls for the month. Thank you.
Thank you. John Beswick?
Good evening. For the month of September, there was a total of 72 permits, 20 building, 15 electrical, 5 fire protection, 9 HVAC, 7 plumbing, 5 roofing, 6 zoning, 5 use and occupancies. There was 4 ENS, 1 sewer tapping connection, and 2 road occupancies. The estimated cost of construction was $18,207,691.10, and the permit fees were $87,445.60. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Board of Supervisors announcements.
Tom had a question?
I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question while we're on the reports of the chief?
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
I just wanted to get some clarification for our community regarding some activity that's happening in this region. What is the department's position, and by extension the township's position, with regards to this understanding that Tiger Swan is operating in our region? What is their legal abilities? Tiger Swan is the organization that works with Sunoco. It's their security force. They were the ones that were out in Dakotas with that pipeline out there, and they've been in this region as well. They've already identified themselves as state troopers at the Andover property. So what is, for the community, if the PUC rules and they start doing work in our community, what is their rights? What the citizens need to understand about this organization? And because I have a lot of friends that are out there fighting this good fight, and they're being followed. So I want to know what their legal abilities are here in our community. So if you could elaborate on that. Hate to put you on the spot with that, but it's come up today. I received a phone call this afternoon that somebody was being followed by a black pickup truck that was also seen at the Andover property over the weekend. So, well, because people are under this maybe it's a misconception that Tiger Swan is allowed to operate and do what they're doing. So I just want to know, for the sake of the community, so if you could elaborate, I'd appreciate it.
No problem at all. As far as I'm concerned, they're a security agency, plain and simple. So if they're hired by that agency, they have the right to operate as a security force for that agency, for their properties and so forth. But as far as the laws go, they have to abide by every law that every other citizen in this place does. So if there's harassment involved in it, they will be dealt with accordingly. We have not had any experience with them as of yet. And I'll give you an example where we had an episode about a year and a half ago, and it's unrelated to Sunoco, but there was a security force that wanted to operate under their guidelines. And when they told us what their guidelines were, we said absolutely not, because if you do that, we're going to arrest you. So they will be held to the same standard that any other public citizen will be held to. That you can have my guarantee. But we have not had any experience with them as of yet.
Right. Well, they're not operating in our community right now, but they are.
Well, as long as they stay within the realm of the law, they can do their job, but if they step out of the realm of what they're hired to do legally, we will deal with them just like anybody else. There's no exception in my book. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Supervisors' announcements, Phil?
Nothing.
Just my congratulations to Lisa for her appointment to Pratt.
Absolutely, congratulations.
Congratulations, it'll be a big help to us as a township.
Lisa Cavada deals with all our trash recycling issues every day. She was just elected to the Pennsylvania Recycling. There you go, Professional Recycling of Pennsylvania Board. So we're expanding West Goshen's influence into state boards, which is excellent. Congratulations. Very good.
Casey, any announcements?
I have a couple of guys. This Saturday, October 14th, we have our curbside yard waste collection. Please have your waste at curbside by Friday night. They'll be there early Saturday morning. Second, Saturday night, October 14th at 7:30 is Lego Batman at the Community Amphitheater. I also have tonight, it's not on the agenda, but I'd like to see if the board would agree to sign this. We have the sewage treatment agreement with Thornbury Township. We've been waiting for this for over 2 months, similar to the East Goshen agreement. I'd like you to consider that either later at the meeting or sometime tonight. And also, we've repeated it several times, but we will be having a second budget discussion next Wednesday night, 6 o'clock in this room. It's a public meeting. The entire board will be here. All of our departments will be here. Department heads will be here. And we'll have a more in-depth discussion on the budget at that time. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Township engineer, Rick?
The only thing I have is that Casey and I have been attending a 3-day stormwater symposium at Villanova University, which is held every 2 years.
So, Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The zoning hearing board held a case on the 26th of October with regards to Chester County Hospital for signage relief. They needed to install two wall signs that exceeded the allowable limits. This was strictly a health and safety matter. They also needed to install a larger monument sign because people were having issues people being able to find the entrance to the hospital. Once again, health and safety. The zoning hearing board did render a decision in their favor. The hospital had already installed the emergency signs because there was an incident prior to them installing them where someone almost died in the parking lot because they thought it was in their best interest to drive themselves to the hospital instead of the ambulance. So, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of August 16th, September 13th.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the treasurer's report dated September 30 for the general fund, the sewer fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund, and the bills to be paid from those funds.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Tyler, good, thank you. Next is the annual presentation for the Westchester Public Library, Victoria Dow. Oh.
Good evening, I'm Victoria Dow. I'm the director of the Westchester Public Library, and I'm very sorry that we missed the meeting last month due to some oversights on my part. First of all, thank you very much for the support that West Goshen Township provides the Westchester Public Library. You help support our Teen Tweens program, which has been growing over the last 2-3 years. We have a regular Tuesday afternoon program for that age group. Crafts, provide them snacks. They have done some charity crafts for the SPCA recently. They do homework and generally socialize and have a safe place to go after school for a period of time every week. We also have a new writing club for teens that is starting up again, and we also have a teen advisory board where we welcome teens to help plan and hold programs for their peers at the library. And this is in addition, of course, to the story times that we offer for children. And I also am happy to tell you that our summer reading club this year, we had a nice increase in registrations from West Goshen Township. And overall, the usage from the township is about a quarter of our overall usage, our circulation, visits, program attendance. So your residents, you're all using it, and we're happy to have you there, and please spread the word. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Did a good job.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Discussion and possible adoption of ordinance number 8, 2017, amending the township code for trash dumpsters. Kristen?
Thank you. Because it's a proposed amendment to the Chapter 78 of the West Goshen Code, we have to advertise this as a public hearing. This was advertised in the Daily Local News on September 27, 2017. I also sent a copy of the ordinance for public inspection to the Law Library and to the Daily Local News. I think this is something that Mr. Webb had brought to the board's attention, that there were instances where people are using trash dumpsters, what they're doing construction projects at the property, and keeping them in the public right-of-way. So this proposes to make amendment to Chapter 78, which regulates vehicles and traffic, and it would be unlawful for a dumpster to be placed within the township right-of-way. So, simple amendment.
We've been enforcing this for years without help of an ordinance. And this is a big help, you know, because our PD's been great in supporting public works, but people can come around the corner where they're moving their car and the kids are walking around these dumpsters in the street. And, you know, so this supports that.
Also, portable storage units as well. You're seeing those to be a little bit more common as pods, so that this covers dumpsters as well as pods.
I'd like to move for adoption.
Anything from the audience? Yes.
Does this ordinance, do we also have rules regarding the trash toters as well? Being left out on the curb for days or weeks on end?
Yeah, there's the trash regulations specifically talk about when they're supposed to be placed out and when they're supposed to be returned back, yes. So that's already in the code. In a different section, that's not under Chapter 78.
Right, exactly.
But it's in there?
It is.
Because I know there's been a few people that have complained about that as well. You know, driving down, especially when the roads are a little bit more narrow. So, anyway, all right, thank you.
Go first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Discussion and possible adoption of ordinance number 9, 2017, amending the township code for dirt bikes and ATVs.
So again, because this would propose an amendment to the township code through an ordinance, we have to advertise it as a public hearing. And again, this was advertised in the Daily Local News on September 27th, 2017. Because we only do a summary ad, we then have to make a full copy of the ordinance available for the public to inspect, and we do that both at the Law Library and the Daily Local News, so we did that. This would create a whole new chapter in your code that would regulate all terrain vehicles and dirt bikes. This came about as a result of a complaint from a citizen with neighbor activity, people riding dirt bikes that was causing nuisances. So we looked at other codes and what our municipal partners are doing or neighbors are doing, and it's across the board pretty typical that they do regulate this activity. The board had some discussion on this, and where you came down with was that in order to operate a dirt bike or an ATV on private property, you have to have 1 acre or more in size. So that's primarily the thrust of this. There's some other provisions put in there in terms of if you're on somebody else's property that meets that size limitation, you have to have the permission of that property owner. You have to have, there's noise limitations, you have to have a proper muffling device, and then obviously it has the violation and penalty section. So the first time it's done, the police department can issue a warning, and then the second or subsequent offense, fines can be issued.
I move for approval of ordinance number 9.
you. You got a first and second. Any questions from the audience? Yes?
Are the fines spelled out? They are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the second-class township code dictates how municipal ordinances for a second-class township are enforced. So we follow that provision of the second-class code, and this is something that's enforced criminally, and it is spelled out.
And it also protects the landscapers for their equipment, so that equipment can be used on properties less than an acre, obviously. We didn't want to hurt anybody in business. This is just those small lots that tend to be a real nuisance.
Does this also spell out the definition? So motorized bikes are excluded, correct, unless they are noisy?
Dirt bikes.
Yeah, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I understood that you wanted a definition for dirt bikes to be added. So there's a definition for an ATV, and there's a definition for a dirt bike.
If you want to look at it, you're welcome to.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Setting hearing date for Woodlands and Greystone.
Mr. Chair, I think there was a question.
Oh,
One.
No, just Jay Atkins.
Oh.
I just want to thank you all very much.
well,
Speedy work on that. Thank you.
When does that take effect?
5 days
5
after
days
next.
after today. Okay. Yeah, 5 days effective.
5 days effective. Okay. Will individuals in the past who've been an issue be notified of this, or?
Yeah, I'll get a copy of the ordinance and have it delivered.
Thank you, sir.
okay, a hearing date for Woodlands.
Kristen, we just,
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Colgrove is here. Why don't you explain what you're asking the board to do, if you don't mind?
Good morning, or,
Yeah.
There needs to be order.
I'm going to sit down now. Good evening, Lou Colagreco on behalf of Bill Reeser, Sundry Reeser Development. We are requesting tonight that the board set a hearing date for November 8th, I believe, in order to have a hearing on the establishment of the NID district that we talked about at our meeting, or your meeting last month. It's under pursuant to law, the board has to hold a hearing on this. You don't have to make a decision on November 8th. In fact, you can't make a decision for a period of 45 days following that hearing. So it's just a chance for us to give a public hearing of the proposal of the NID plan, which was submitted to the township late last week on Friday. I'm sure you'll have your consultants going through it. We'll be available to answer any questions that you have on the 8th. So
Yeah.
that's all we're asking for tonight, is to set a hearing date on November 8th.
So we received it. It's a rather lengthy document. Casey will forward it to you if he hasn't already. Ben Reed is your bond counsel, so he's here as well. He has reviewed it. I have reviewed it. What we would like, and what I proposed to Mr. Colagreco and his team today in a conference call, was that after the board's had an opportunity to review it, if you can provide your questions or comments to Casey, we will then have a meeting and go over our questions and comments on the document. There's a lot of details in here. The devil's in the detail. A lot of it deals with development, and a lot of it deals with bonds. So that's why you have sort of two different eyes looking at it. It is based on the statute, the authorizing statute to be able to create one of these districts, and they've pretty much followed that statute. What I've also asked Mr. Colagreco to do, and we'll provide it to you as well, is to sort of put a timeline together of all the different actions that have to happen, both from the township's perspective as well as the bonding agency, which is proposed to be the Chester County Industrial Development Authority. So I think it's helpful to understand from beginning to end, if this goes forward, what exactly has to happen. So we'll send that to you as well. And the thing that I was a little bit confused about is that the action tonight to set the hearing of November 8th is not to adopt any sort of an ordinance. It's really just to open up the public process for this concept of creating this neighborhood improvement district. So it's really, to get it going, there's language in the statute that says after that hearing, you then have to wait 45 days for proposed objections to come from the property owner. So there's a timeline set out in the statute, which we'll be able to explain to you. But again, you'll have to look through the plan that gets sent to you from Casey.
Thank you.
and I would make motion that we set the date for November 8th as a hearing for the Woodlands at Greystone, dealing with the neighborhood improvement district process.
Any questions from the audience? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Next is discussion of possible zoning amendment for Crown Castle.
This is something that my colleague in my office, Kim Benzie, she had previously actually worked on the edits to the zoning ordinance to address changes in technology and wireless communication facilities, specifically DAS, distributed antenna systems. Since that ordinance has passed, Kim is now a member of our firm, so she's helping us, again, propose zoning amendments. Thanks, Ben. Crown Castle is actually one of the companies that builds distributed antenna systems, and they have come to the township and proposed to enter a right-of-way use agreement. Before, when we met with representatives of Crown Castle, they looked at your ordinance and they're suggesting that they want to be on different streets. So we would need to make a change to the zoning ordinance.
It's bad.
Too close?
No, it's off.
I can talk about it. I'll talk about it. I have a very loud voice. Before we would enter any sort of agreement with Crown Castle, which would give them the authority to use the right-of-way to install these systems on municipal facilities, light poles, and utility poles the township owns, although I'm not sure you do. They've asked that we make amendments to the zoning ordinance to identify specifically streets where these would be permitted. So this ordinance has not been vetted by your planning commission. It's not gone to the Chester County Planning Commission. It's a proposal to see if you're interested. If you are, it's a very short amendment. It changes the height regulations for basically what's called a tower-based wireless communication facility. Specifically, again, it was to deal with distributed antenna systems. So I don't know if you've seen any, I can show you, when this ordinance was passed, we had sent around some photographs, but they take an existing utility pole and they put antenna structures or equipment structures on the top of the pole, which is to be able to get more coverage for wireless communication. They then, Crown Castle provides their services to the cellular companies, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon. They would like to enter this agreement with you, but they want to make sure that where they're looking in your township to put these systems are permissible locations under your code. So the streets that they've asked, I think you guys worked with Kim to develop these major thoroughfares or major streets. It's Phoenixville Pike, McDermott Drive, Brandywine Parkway, Wilson Drive, Airport Road, American Boulevard, Wrights Lane, Ward Avenue, Old Fernhill Road, Lawrence Drive, and Green Hill Road from Phoenixville Pike to Route 202. We're trying purposely to keep them out of residential neighborhoods and keep them on main thoroughfares where there will be existing utility poles. So if the board is comfortable, what we would do is we would forward this zoning amendment to your planning commission, the Chester County Planning Commission. You would have to schedule a hearing, beyond 30 days from the time we send it to those two organizations, and then you would have, like you normally do for a zoning amendment, you have a public hearing process. If this gets adopted, then Crown Castle wants to come back and negotiate this right-of-way agreement where they're willing to pay to the municipality for every facility that they put on a municipal facility. They pay you a franchise fee similar to you're seeing with your Verizon, your Comcast, that they pay you franchise fees based on the revenue that they receive from the services that they provide within West Goshen Township. This is something that they've done. The only, my other municipal client that I represent is East Goshen. They have a similar ordinance and they have a similar right-of-way agreement that they've already entered.
If these particular streets were approved to do so, and this is under conditional use, am I right?
That's right.
And a proposal comes in from those streets so designated, and we said no.
They wouldn't be able to put it up.
Yeah, it's still conditional use.
So as long as it's conditional use, I don't mind, in my opinion, I don't mind our planning commission and everybody else to give us an opinion on it also, instead of just nixing it. I don't like them. I think they're ugly, but having listed the streets, I know other municipalities have done it on main collector roads, that type of thing. And as long as it's under conditional use, as Board of Supervisors can deny it, every single one of them. And that's all I care about. And I'd like to have as much input from the planning commission and everybody else before we went to a hearing on it. That's my 2 cents.
Chris, just for clarification, these are things that are placed on already existing utility lines, so telephone.
Typically, they're not always. So after the ordinance was enacted in East Goshen, they filed a conditional use application. They had identified 6 sites, 5 of which were on existing Pico poles.
Right.
There was 1 Pico pole, and I believe it was on Wilson Drive, that for whatever reason, I think the structural stability of the pole could not support something additional. So they had proposed to put in a new pole. It's going to look just like a utility pole. So in the 6 sites, only 1 of them was going to require the installation of a new pole. All the remaining 5 were on existing poles. The thing that was helpful to have it be as a conditional use, to Ray's point, was that in the conditional use process, the planning commission and the board could work with the applicant, Crown Castle, to make them adjustments. For example, they shifted the location so they were not in a way that would cause any visual obstruction to motorists. They asked them to consider changing the colors, things like that. So they definitely have input in, and ultimately the ultimate approval process if it goes through conditional use.
I read an article on this. It was a while ago, and in that article they showed pictures. And what had happened, if you didn't have something in place like this, you saw them all over residential communities. They were sticking them on streetlights, and sticking them on, and it was horrible. So, you know, I think further input, but definitely conditional use and designated the streets.
Words just to see exactly what
I agree with you.
looking at.
I recommend it.
And as I say, what I'll do is I'll forward to you all the application, because Crown Castle actually does a really nice job. They're very detailed. They actually put an entire binder together and had all the information for every site. They had photographs. They superimposed on the existing, like what it looks like today, and then what it would look like with their pool and their, not the new pool, but the pool with the equipment. And they, like I said, it took a long time. And they went through the process. They were not in a rush. They were willing to work with the township. So I'll provide that so that you can see. And I'd also encourage you to reach out to either Mark Gordon, the zoning officer in East Goshen, or Rick Smith to see, what experience they've had with working with Crown Castle.
Could you give us an idea, like you said, the franchise fee, like per unit, like what East Goshen is getting for what you mentioned?
Well, just started there, and then they're not built yet,
Okay.
so the fee hasn't commenced.
Okay.
But the other thing they did is they under the prior East Goshen ordinance, there were 2 facilities I think that had already been constructed, and they agreed to pay the franchise fee on the existing facilities.
Do we know what that is approximately?
I'm trying. It's based on the gross revenue that they received, so I don't know that number, but I can try to get that for you.
Crown isn't a public utility, they're just.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. That actually
Yeah.
is being litigated.
Well,
being litigated.
it was originally found about 6 months ago. These companies were found not to be utilities, which saved us a lot of heartburn. But I'm sure they're all litigating against that right now.
Yeah, not Crown Castle alone.
Right.
All of these.
Yeah, all these distributed antenna companies were found not to be
Is it
utilities.
separate from Verizon, or are they DBAs, or I mean?
No, it's a totally separate private
party.
company.
Yeah. This is, all they do is co-locate.
External.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, it's-
Yeah.
Kristen, if we agreed to a hearing for them, would that take care of all these properties?
All this is doing is identifying streets where they could potentially use for purposes of putting these DAS systems on. Doesn't mean they're gonna come in with an application.
If approved by conditional use.
Right, after condition, so the ordinance that's before you is to amend your zoning ordinance to say that if a company like Crown Castle wanted to install a DAS, they could only do it on these identified roads if they get conditional use approval from the board of supervisors.
I mean, I noticed the roads like Phoenixville Pike, I think there are some houses on there. I know an airport road, depending on where they're talking about, if you're above Nottingham and Wooded Way, there's houses and there's phone lines there. So, I mean, that's something we'd have to look at, because I sure as heck would want that in my neighborhood.
Well,
That's what we could deny.
These are just suggestions. These are just suggestions. So if you see some of these roads, you think, you know what, I'd rather not see them go on this road.
And we can go further and very carefully delineate on those streets where they can go.
That's right.
in only commercial areas, industrial areas, and that was the original intent of the ordinance, what, 3-4 years ago, was to keep these pyramids out of residential areas, so that's,
Right.
we can do that,
So
absolutely.
Chris, I would say, any member of the board, if looking at the list of the roads here, you say, well, geez, you're right, Airport Road does have from Green Hill up until, I guess almost where the airport
We
is,
can do
yeah.
cross streets and limit the area, absolutely. Make it very
We could
specific.
do that, so please provide your comments, because what I'd like to do is, the draft that the board is most comfortable with would be the one that we would circulate to the different plans.
Right,
I would also think that the comments from the planning commission will be.
absolutely.
Well, then let's do one step at a time, go to the planning commission
Yeah.
first,
Let's
and
go
then bring it
first.
back,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Ours and the county's.
Sure.
Let's get the information,
Yep,
as long as it's conditional use.
exactly.
So can more than one company come in and do this? Like, once you open it up to Crown Castle, can
Yeah, we can't limit it to one company, that would be illegal, so we could have several providers come in.
and so they could ask for additional streets or the same streets?
No, they would have to, we would have to amend the zoning ordinance again, which we wouldn't.
They aren't asking us to like for these streets.
No.
These were streets that my colleague Kim Benzine, I believe, did she meet with you, Rick and Bill? The township is sort of being proactive in identifying, okay, which are the streets that have the most sort of traffic in a more commercial area to
So
try to keep.
hypothetically, could we have 4 companies having these things going down the same street?
The benefit, yes, the benefit to us by doing something like this is it specifically states, no matter if there's 70 companies or not. In West Goshen, this is the only spot you can be. You don't like it, tough. So if every one of them were different, at least they'd be limited to a certain spot instead of risking the point that they could trial you elsewhere.
I don't know enough about the technology, but I know for cell towers, is there somebody here that does? Oh, John, you're here. John Chive is here from Crown Castle. I have to compliment you. You're really great. Come on up. Do you mind if you? Is there an interference thing where you can't have within a certain distance from another DAS system? We have an RF dog probably, right?
The RF guy here.
We do. Good evening. My name is John Shive. I'm from Crown Castle, and this is Dan Moa. He's our senior RF engineer at Crown Castle. Our predecessor was NextG Networks. I bring that up just because NextG Networks has already been in the community. NextG Networks has 3 existing facilities here in West Goshen Township. Mr. Moa has been with Crown Castle / NextG Networks for the past decade. He worked on that system way back in the NextG days. About 3-4 years ago, Crown Castle acquired NextG Networks. So everything that was a NextG infrastructure, DAS system, Crown Castle now owns that infrastructure. A lot of things were said, just to kind of throw some things out to clear up some of the questions or concerns. And plus, we can definitely field any questions or comments that you may have. Dan is definitely an RF expert in this technology. I've been at Crown myself for about the past 3 years, doing the same type of work as a government relations specialist, more the face of the company, knowing a little bit about every aspect of how we deploy these systems, work with municipalities, talk about the need for this infrastructure, and how we can design it, how we can build it, how we can maintain it, and do it the right way with collaboration and definitely much needed input from municipalities. One thing I bring up, just looking back at the existing infrastructure that's here today, already in West Goshen Township, those facilities were originally part of a big Metro PC and Cricket build. The original locations, those networks have since been added to with Verizon Wireless. So I bring it up like to start because as Verizon's here today, where Crown Castle is looking to enhance Verizon cell phone coverage, that's our customer today for this future work. In the past, just 2015 going into 2016, those existing facilities that we've had here since 2009, 2010, we could co-locate on the same pole with the same antenna within the box of equipment, the ancillary box where the radio equipment goes. So it wasn't necessarily another pole or an additional pole. It wasn't an additional antenna. Well, of course, we ran structural calculations to make sure that the facility, the pole didn't need to be replaced, and if it did, we went through the permitting process here at the municipality to do that upgrade. Now, the future sites, well, there's never been a site before, whether it be an existing pole that needs to be replaced, or the pole runs through structural calculations and does not need to be replaced, there are limitations to poles we can go on. If there's a transformer or high primary power, we have to abide by the same PICO standards that any other person would have to who's attaching to that pole. So there are limitations of where we can go. Of course, the major thoroughfares are where this enhancement of wireless infrastructure is needed. So what we were working with some of the township folks on was identifying roads where we think these future projects are going to come. For Verizon Wireless is our customer today, but just like back in the next G days, we would be deploying our business model is co-location. So it would still be that one antenna on the top of a pole that could potentially have as many carriers as there are to still operate out of that one antenna. Now, the things that do change, that's the easy part to sell on my side. The difficult part is the equipment does need to get bigger. Right? If you add, and by equipment, I mean the ancillary box that is located on the pole approximately about 10, 11 feet above ground height. That box, today for Verizon, for one carrier, is only about 16 inches wide, about 1.5 feet deep, and 52 inches tall. But it's about the same width of a utility pole. If a second carrier comes, depending on the technology that they're looking to deploy, we would then take Verizon's equipment and put it in what we call a shroud box, so that that box could house multiple carriers. Just going on easy math, the box would double for 2 carriers, or triple for 3 carriers, so in width, but not in height or depth. So again, that limits many poles with many antennas, but the existing pole that we would go on would have to have some added infrastructure. Every one of these facilities is powered with, they're low emissions, so each one of the facilities has about 110, just like a wall outlet coming to it for power. They're outputting about 40 watts per carrier, and they are fed with fiber, so each and every facility does have fiber fed to it. Questions that you have for Crown Castle John Shive or Crown Castle Dan Moe are
I'd rather wait to get the information.
And
Where does the fiber come from, underground, up the pole?
Typically, we're going on existing poles. There's a lot of wood utility poles. The 3 sites that we have today.
So we're going to have additional wiring from pole to pole?
It's no thicker than your finger, the fiber optic cable. And we have a lot of fiber already throughout the pole lines that are existing today. So we try to deploy our networks where we have fiber nearby. It's no thicker than a pen, the fiber, a counter fiber. So you wouldn't notice the difference in the fiber feed. Great question.
Is there any, what's the risk or the impact on home networks from the output from this unit?
Sure. I think I'll defer to Mr. Moa, because yesterday he made me zip my mouth when it came to, well, Dan, would you want one of these outside of your house? And then I'll let him say what he said to me yesterday.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dan, as John introduced. I'm an RF engineer with Crown Castle. And the impact that it would have on your home network is absolutely nothing. Essentially, your home network operates on a different set of frequencies in the cellular bands, operate on a different set of frequencies. They're all licensed by the FCC, so it would have no impact on your particular home network, because your home network would be operating within a specified frequency band that the FCC allows you to. So same thing with the cellular band as well.
So why don't we encourage John and Dan to attend the next planning commission meeting? Sure. So that the planning commission can really understand the technology, what the proposal is, as well as members of the public, and then depending on what the planning commission has to say, get this back to the board. Does that make sense? Next Tuesday.
Thank you.
What time is it? Is it 7 o'clock?
Right here.
That'd be fantastic. We appreciate it.
I tell you, I'm particularly interested, as I mentioned, you heard, like, in the residential areas, some of those roads that were named on there, I'm not sure if they understood or not, but there are communities there. And I wouldn't be for that at all. So,
Understood.
The Airport Road in particular, and Phoenixville Pike, there are some residents on the Phoenixville Pike area on one side.
We'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Just one more comment, Chris, that I believe you brought up, what would the fees look like for the proposed right-of-way agreement? Just across the board, we mentioned East Goshen earlier, I believe. The 5% rev share is per carrier, per pole, per year. So that comes out to be about $250 per location, whether it's a Pico pole, a Verizon pole, or if there was a municipality-owned pole. So carrier 1, 5%, about $250 per site. And then if we can get a second carrier onto that location, or if there already is, in this case, 3 facilities in the township, it would have 2 carriers operating on those facilities.
When you say 250, is that 250 per year? Is that
250 per year. Yep.
Thank you.
Quite welcome. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Possible adoption of resolution number 18, 2017, approving the allocation of state aid for the 3 West Goshen Township pension plans. Casey.
This is our annual resolution regarding our, the state aid we receive for pensions. The 2017 Commonwealth allocation totaled $578,118.92. And per the actuary, it's being split up in the following ways. The Administrative and Roads Pension Plan, the 2017 actuarial funding requirement being $396,229, shall receive $278,561.93 of the allocation. The sewer pension plan, the 2017 actuarial funding requirement being $142,762, shall receive $100,367.05 of the Commonwealth allocation. And finally, the police pension plan, the 2017 actuarial funding requirement being $283,331, shall receive $199,190.94 of the Commonwealth allocation. Seek approval.
I'd move for approval. I'll take it.
Right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
You better believe it.
Good.
Possible approval of natural de-icing liquid bid for bids opening on October the 4th.
Okay, this is our annual beet juice bid, which aids in our biological treatment of our salt to help get rid of salt use as much as we can. We had one bidder this year. It's been the same bidder for several years. We opened those bids on October 4th at 10:15 a.m. The price per gallon for 4,500 gallons delivered is $2.05 per gallon for a total of $9,225.
How's that with last year's?
$1.91 last.
Yeah, it was $1.91 last year. I think more places are using it now, so the supply is probably getting a little pinched. So it's just a little bit higher than last year, but it's very helpful to us.
And it's natural.
And it's natural. Doesn't smell
That's
so
the
good,
key.
but
That's the key.
So when you say it's natural, it's okay for the cars, I mean, we don't have to worry about the...
there's no corrosion. It's
toxic.
yeah, it's non-toxic. It's the leftover after they squeeze the beets for sugar, essentially for sugar beet juice. It's the leftover. It looks like molasses, a little stinky, but completely natural, non-toxic, doesn't hurt fish or anything. And we reduce and we mix it with our brine. We also pre-treat our salt with it, and it lowers the temperature at which ice and snow melts. It's extremely effective for lower temperature storms to help us fight snow.
And you don't have that balance either. A lot of times you drive behind a salt truck and you see that balance.
Yeah.
And it just creates no balance. It kind of sticks to the road.
Yeah.
And stays.
And it stays right on the road instead of bouncing out into the lawns.
We're actually hoping, PennDOT's just approved it for their use. So with that, hopefully
Yes.
this is the last bid.
Right, we can buy it off the co-stars, hopefully next year.
Which
That's
should-
good.
Which
that
the
should-
state does the bid, we just buy off the contract then. So we'll have a definite supply.
Have forever.
Absolutely.
I move for approval.
Right.
I'll second that.
Chris?
Aye.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's your second, good.
possible adoption, resolution number 19, and various traffic control devices.
Yeah, this is resolution number 19. We periodically do some updates with the recommendation of Rick Craig, our engineer, and our police traffic division. We are installing 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs, which weren't there before, on St. James Road from Paoli Pike to Isabel Lane, and also prohibited turns at intersections. We have a driveway at 1011 Westchester Pike. We're prohibiting the left turn lane. Direction of travel is north, and we're prohibiting the left turn at Rose Lane. That is at the new Smoothie King on Route 3.
Move for approval.
Chris?
Okay, no questions from the audience? Okay, all in favor?
Now, we were requested for a possible agreement, sewer agreement, what was it?
Yeah,
Chester County?
yes, it's Thornbury, Chester County, because of the new bond, the sewer authority.
We're doing each one.
We're doing each one separately. The last one you did was East Goshen. This is Thornbury. We should have West Whitelands at the November meeting for approval, and hopefully West Towns as well. So this is the second of four. Just redrafting their agreements, bringing up to speed. These haven't been done since, my gosh, last bond in 2000, 2001. So it's just updating the agreement.
So I move for approval of the sewer agreement between Thornbury and Chester County.
Second that. All in favor? Anything else from the audience, from anybody? Yes, Tom.
There's two things I wanted to discuss. The first one is the easier one. We currently have an employee benefit of perfect attendance awards. And in July, a check was written out for $1,000 to Mr. Lalonde. He took that check, cashed it, and then handed out $50 bills.
I did.
To township employees. There is no written criteria for this. I think that's a bad idea.
It's in the budget area.
Whether it's in the budget or not is irrelevant.
No, it's
what
not.
is relevant is if an individual has control over who gets what, and also themselves getting.
I'm an employee here, I know that.
Then
Just asking.
we need to have a written policy so that all employees of the township know exactly what needs to be done and what they need to do to achieve this goal. It's a discretionary, arbitrary budget line item that needs to be fixed. Because by allowing an individual, any individual, to give themselves a benefit without a specific approval, especially by the BoS, I think that's a problem for our township.
If you want us to
So can we,
Tom, the annual benefit is approved in the budget every year. We've been doing it for 40 years, Brad, would you say?
As long as I can remember, we used to do Wawa cards.
Yeah, we used to
You
give
know what I
Wawa
mean? We
cards.
used to do like, wasn't it, Joe, a Wawa $50
Yeah.
Wawa card, and then we had to stop that, so the perfect attendance, we've always kept it going. Your question is not whether we reward for a perfect attendance like we have in the past, being that it's in the budget and approved, but how, you're more concerned that if Casey has perfect attendance, he gets it too. Is that what you're, I'm
No.
trying to figure out what you're asking.
what I'm saying is that we need to have, whenever we have taxpayer expenditures of any kind, whether it's a budgeted line item or not, we need to be able to track that. And when we have any individual in a government agency who has that power to give out an arbitrary.
There's nothing arbitrary about it. Everybody.
But it was not done in July, and there's been no indication of who.
I don't remember what month we read the list, but didn't we?
There's nothing in the meeting minutes.
We didn't do this.
So my point is.
So should we have written rules for every single thing?
I think that when it comes to taxpayer money, we need to be able to track that, number one.
Okay.
And we need to have a written policy so that all employees
know the policy.
Know exactly what's available to them and what they need to do to achieve that goal in writing.
The incentive is perfect attendance, right?
It's perfect. It's for not taking any sick days.
We have one at a time.
It's for not
Right,
taking
but
any
how
sick days.
does taxpayers know that every employee that had perfect attendance got what they were supposed to get? That's the point. Without a written policy in place by the township, it opens the door to arbitrary decisions. So what I'm asking for is for consideration to amend or change our policy handbook to include what it is for perfect attendance in writing. I think that's fair.
It's pretty darn clear that you didn't take a sick day. Everybody knows the policy.
I mean, do we have a written policy on it?
We don't. We've been doing it for 40 years. Every single employee knows that if they don't take a sick day,
Consider adding it.
sure, take it under advisement.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal.
That's fine.
I mean, I don't think he's questioning whether it's right or wrong.
I'm fine with that.
No, I'm not questioning if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, so I don't see the problem just putting it in writing, because it is an expenditure, so let's just.
And we do approve it. Yeah.
Put it on the books. This
Not
way,
at all.
no one can question us going forward about it. Just this way, hey, it is a benefit that's given, right? So we have to look at it as some type of income. You're giving a person some sort of monetary benefit, so I'm sure the IRS would appreciate it too, even though we're not talking about a lot of money, but I have no problem putting in a written policy on that.
Okay. The second thing I wanted to just bring up was regarding email clarification. I tried to ask about this in this late spring, April, May, June, and unfortunately other things have come up over the summer, and I'm trying to clean out my files and paperwork. And there was an exchange that I had with the township regarding some emails that go back to the beginning of the sewer issues from October of 2015. And I had sent a right to know request asking for certain information, and I received back responses. And in the emails that I received in my right to know, I was asking some questions. I'm asking now about it because my final request for clarification went unanswered from May 10th of this year. So, and I did try to get clarification on some of these points from the sewer authority, and the sewer authority chairman put it up for a vote to not allow Mr. Fox to answer my questions. So I did try to go to them first. The string involves some forms, some documents that revolved around the capital improvements. Ms. Camp's office, Mr. Jennings specifically, got back to me to clarify a few points. Then the one question I had was regarding, I said to Mr. Lalonde that there seems to be documents missing, specifically an agreement that was presented to the Board of Supervisors on October 28th. Now, I asked for the meeting minutes. I was told through these communications that this session was an executive session on October 28th. It was not a regular session. And it was specifically, I said, it would seem that the board approved something on the 28th. The response I got back was from Mr. Lalonde was that lastly, the October 28th meeting, no meeting minutes are available, no official actions or approvals occurred at this meeting. So what I need clarification on is that there is a contract and communications from my right to know that show otherwise. So I want to know, on October 28, 2015, 3 of the current board were there, and the previous 2 was Ms. McElvain and Mr. Murphy. What happened on October 28th? There was a presentation made by Josh Fox to the board regarding capital improvements. Can you please elaborate? Because what's being told to me this year in the communications, and it was also said that when I asked if the township solicitor was present at the meeting, the response was no. There was no solicitor at this executive session, and that the executive session specifically was dealing with legal matters regarding personnel issues at the plant. So he said that Mr. Fox was there, attended this meeting, this executive session, to explain issues that he observed at the sewer plant. The township solicitor was not present. The only items discussed was litigation and personnel-related matters. But that's in direct contrast, and I pointed this out in my communications back to the township in May, that October 29th message from Josh Fox to Casey Lalonde was, "Thank you very much for yesterday's presentation. We did approve the proposals, and I will forward you an email scanned copy." So I'm curious why, I'm trying to understand the discrepancies here. What occurred on October 28th that dealt with litigation without our township solicitor, but approvals were made and documents were signed for a capital improvement plan for the sewer authority?
The township solicitor was not there. Our special labor counsel was at the meeting. It was litigation and personnel. Josh Fox was there to explain things I could not explain to the board of supervisors that had to do with personnel and the sewer plant. That is all I'm going to say, because it was executive session. No meeting minutes are ever taken in executive session, and nothing should be discussed outside of executive session. That's it.
So it was an executive session.
It was an executive session. And the board can invite whomever they want to into an executive session to provide details for them that the staff may not be able to provide.
So my question now is for clarification, because the email that went out to the township board was to talk about capital improvements and the budget. October 23rd, to the board. As you know, we have scheduled a 1 p.m. meeting, Wednesday, October 28th, to discuss the budget and sewer issues. Do you see my discrepancy?
No, there's no discrepancy. There's no discrepancy, because those issues had to do with personnel directly, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm not divulging anything out of executive session. I'm not going to do that. It's against the law.
But you've already done that by telling me that nothing was approved. Yet there's a signed contract and communications
I approved
that show otherwise.
to come in to do a capital improvement inspection of the plant. That's my authority to do that. The board then approved the expenditures to pay HOG for those later.
No, what the board approved was a capital improvement plan that the authority knew nothing about. So this is your email to the board. The first portion of the meeting will be on sewer issues, as I've invited Dennis Michael and Josh Fox to provide a technical analysis.
Yes,
the second portion
I cannot provide because
will
I
be
am not a sewer engineer.
on the 2016 budget.
With all personnel issues related to maintenance of the plant.
Did you discuss the budget at this meeting?
I'm not going to divulge anything else that happened during the meeting. I cannot divulge anything out to executive session. Tom, I can't do that.
But see, that's where I'm confused again, because you've done
Tom,
that in my communications.
I'm done.
So,
This has been addressed time and time again.
yes, it has.
And you still get the same answer. I suggest that the board stop this conversation altogether. It has been asked and answered several times before.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because it has been asked and answered. Because now,
Again and again.
so November 4th, this meeting is what led up to November 4th. You said that the HRG did not present at that meeting. You said that. So communications from this right to know request show otherwise. Not only does it show otherwise, but it thanks again for attending our rather long meeting last night. And I believe your presentation, we finally broke through to the authority. You said they weren't there.
Tom, that was a sewer authority meeting.
No.
That is the.
You guys had a joint session on November 4th.
Conducted their business right there. Mr.
You have
Schiller
told
was here.
us several times, and this is why I'm confused, because what we're being told publicly, and what's actually happening are two different things. We've been told that nothing has been approved. We were told that nothing occurred on November 4th. There was no presentation. He wasn't there. And then Ms. Denham sat in the back of the room and said, no, I talked to him in the hallway. Oh, he was there? Yeah, he was there. Oh, okay then. He presented. The sewer authority did not enter into an executive session. The Board of Supervisors
Yes,
did.
we actually did to discuss the EPA litigation with Steve Miano, the attorney for the authority.
What are you trying to get?
So what I'm trying to get is clarification about what occurred in October, and did this stuff, or is what I'm being told, because I asked for clarification and I didn't get it. So now I'm trying to get it tonight. We were put on the hook for $20 million, and I want to know why. I think the taxpayers need to know why.
Tom, we offered you a tour of the plant and you abandoned us on the tour day. You want to come down to the plant?
No, it's not.
Mr. Woodward and Mr. Moffat will take you on a tour of the plant. We've offered you for 2 years and you don't come down to the plant. You don't want to come down.
No, I didn't come down to the plant because I was asked to come alone.
I don't really,
Has to come
can I
down.
say something?
Absolutely not.
I wasn't at the October 28th meeting that occurred. I think Michael Gailey is the labor lawyer. But, and to your point of, well, where is this leading? There were numerous public meetings with both the authority and the Board of Supervisors leading up to the issuance of the bond, the revised lease between the authority and the township. So whether something, and I don't know what happened on the 28th, I think it was personnel, as Mr. Lamond is saying, it was a personnel executive session and a litigation executive session. They were sort of tied together. That's done. There were subsequent numerous public opportunities to discuss what was going on at the sewer treatment plant, what capital improvements needed to be made, and how they were going to finance that. So to the extent that you're alleging that something happened that shouldn't have happened based on sunshine laws or something else, it was cured. And again, I'm not saying that occurred. I'm saying that you're acting as though there was never a public opportunity for public discussion about the capital improvements and the sewer improvements that need to be made at the plant. That was done ad nauseum.
That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, there's a discrepancy from what I was being told in communications in 2017 and information that I received from a right to know request from 2015. So what I want to know is which version is true. The version from this year where nothing was approved and there was no budget discussion, that was an executive session and I can't talk about it, or was capital improvements and budget discussed when it wasn't supposed to be? Was a presentation made to the Board of Supervisors for capital expenditures that should have been discussed in front of the public? That's what I'm trying to understand. That's what I was looking for. And this is a discrepancy. And I'm asking why? Which version is true? Can anyone elaborate?
We We don't even know what you want. Do you stay awake at night thinking all this stuff up?
No, I simply read, Mr. Mako. Something, I was told that nothing happened, nothing was approved. Yet there's an email the very next day from Josh asking, did the board approve? Yes, we did, and a signed copy went over.
I think the explanation of that is Mr. Lalonde, under the Township Code, is given permission and authority to enter contracts, professional service contracts with HRG, for example, with HRG. He reports to the Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors is kept abreast of the actions that Mr. Lalonde is taking. I didn't write the email, but most likely it was that he had an opportunity to advise the board that he was entering a professional services contract with HRG relating to the sewer plant. That's what I took the email to be. Not that there was a board, there doesn't have to be a board approval of an HRG contract, and there wasn't a board approval on an HRG contract. Mr. Lalonde advises the board of what he, as the manager, believes is a necessary contract to enter. He, I think, signed the contract with HRG and advises the board with their acquiescence and consent, yeah, okay, that's, go ahead, act in your manager capacity. That's what I believe with her.
Right, but that's not what it says. It says, did the board approve? Yes, the board approved, and I will have a signed copy. So what I'm trying to get understanding now, because I'm getting two different pieces of information regarding what happened back then. And I've tried to do this. I went through a series of 6. Your office got it. You guys were receiving it. So I'm now asking for clarification regarding these communications.
We've given you our best clarification.
So no answer.
Correct. Anything else from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
I'm regarding establishing the policy. I used to work in plans and policies for the federal government. And from my understanding, you have an award that is given for perfect attendance. And that's written down somewhere. I really do not see, it's up to you guys though, but I do not see any advantage of wasting time, work, and away from normal duties to publish something that's already written down, already understood, there's procedures in place to verify whether somebody gets the award or not.
Well, you're right, Maxie, but we'll double check and make sure everything's there.
You have to have procedures in place, or otherwise you wouldn't know that this person does have.
No, we want to dot our i's and cross our t's.
So I don't see any real need for an additional time and effort writing.
We'll check it.
Well, I think the question was, Maxie, if there was a written policy.
Well, it doesn't have to be in form of a policy. You have an award, you have the parameters for the award, and you have the procedure set up. I've written many awards.
That's just the point. We need something in writing, that's all. And I don't think it's going to be that
And the fact that
onerous.
it's in the budget and it has been operating for 40
You
years.
have a personnel manual, it's simple enough to check if it's in there, if it's
But
not
if
to
it's
have.
not, just be
Yeah,
said.
we'll take care of it.
Okay.
Thank
The
you.
other thing is, there's been questions that asked and answered many, many different times on the same topic. And just because I question, yes, it's very nice of you all to want to educate people, but if you answer 3 times, that's the normal learning. And after 3 times, put an end to it like you just did. Thank you.
Good, thanks, David.
Gene.
Yes.
Okay, mine's a lot simpler. When you're looking at the Crown Castle for residential areas, Ward Avenue also has residences.
Yes.
That's a good point,
That's very
too.
true.
Well,
Yeah, we'll map everything out.
Yeah, we'll look at all
We'll
of
map
those.
everything out.
So our next planning commission meeting.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
7 o'clock.
If you're available.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the only item on the agenda. There's nothing else on the agenda.
Look for adjournment.
All in favor? Aye.